I want to start with the union, though. Jack, I want to start with where Jack started. And the reason why it is important, because this is where we got Supreme Court involvement. Look, uh, corporations are not a democracy. It is an entity that has great power in controlling employment, meaning employing people or not. Also, they pretty much have our economy rigged. They control it. A few corporations have control over the economy. And as such, we have to make sure that there are laws that protect us, we, the citizens. In a country as we have it, we have the Congress that creates, different laws, and we have boards, we have agencies that interpret those laws or execute those laws, of course, under the executive, and of which the NLRB is one, the Labor Relations Board. When we want to have unions, I mean, like we mentioned before, corporations are powerful and they have the freedom to do what they want. It's not a democracy. They can hire and fire at will. And we created some subjugate structures like unions. And unions are employees getting together so that they can speak with one voice to this powerful entity called a corporation or any job, etc. It's something that provides balance. In other words, the corporations and the different organizations that they form, the different metallurgical this or the Chamber of Commerce, they fight for the rights of a corporation. They fight for the corporate interest, and the corporate interest is not always in the interest of the employee, those people who work for the corporation. So unions are formed so that the average citizen, the average employee, will have a voice that must be listened to or else. Now, there are many ways to control that, right? You can actually corporations can coerce illegally. And why is it illegal? Because Congress have said unions have rights. In other words, they have the right, and there are certain things that corporations with the power that they have cannot stop the creation of unions. They have certain rules they have to follow to ensure that we get humane interaction between union and corporation, between corporation and employee. So now the unions are starting to grow up again. They're starting to assert their will. They're starting to go beyond the coercion of the corporations, and Starbucks is a very good example. I love my Starbucks coffee not because of the coffee taste, but because of the ambiance. I go in there, I meet people, and so forth. So they create there's an environment we have created in these coffee shops, whether it's Starbucks or whether it's others. And these folks, and by the way, Starbucks used to be a very employee centric company. They did right by their employees. But as usual, after a while, Starbucks is one of those companies that can make a whole lot of money doing very little. I mean, making a cup of coffee, which is mostly water, and put in a few fancy drops in it, and it becomes from a drink that costs Starbucks 15 cents, including, it suddenly is worth $5, $7. So when we tell folks to support these radio station, say, hey, buy a cup of coffee a month, anyway. But it costs very much for the coffee, and you would want that excess. The reason many of us are willing to spend, I imagine all of you out there are willing to spend some money on these expensive coffees, is to add to our economy. Ensure that you have people there making an extra dollar, making money to go home and take care of their kids, to get a better education, all that kind of stuff. Well, as Starbucks started to make more money, more shareholders, it got lucrative. And as these companies get lucrative, what happens is, as you know, everybody wants a certain return on their investment, right? Because that's how we were programmed. We think of two things: return on investment and whatever you get in dividends. So a lot of these folks they don't suffice with getting a constant dividend, let's say a 1 or 2% dividend on the stock that you buy, for sitting down at your pool or whatever, as this money makes money for you. A little bit of interest is good, but no, they want constant growth in the company, because if a company is constantly growing its share of the money it's collecting, there's not only the dividend that the company pays, but there's something magical that happens called the appreciation of the stock, which people get rich off, and which they pay lower taxes on appreciation versus dividend. So that's what Starbucks and all these corporations try to do: maximize the value of the stocks, so that their shareholders make more money, the executives make more money. But the only way to do that, after you've maximized the amount of money, you minimize the amount of money you pay for your raw supplies, whether that be coffee, cocoa, and all these other paper, whatever you need to keep that company going. The only other option is to shortchange the employee, which is what they always do: shortchange the employee. So things didn't stay 100% great for the Starbucks employee, as it was a good place before. So they started to unionize, and there are many Starbucks stores that are unionized. Starbucks didn't like that. And so whenever they find people in the store that's starting to try to create a union, they fired them. And that's what they did in this case. They fired 7 people. I don't remember what store. And this is how the Supreme Court message started. It says, after several Starbucks employees announced plans to unionize, they invited a news crew from a local television station to visit the store after hours to promote their unionizing efforts. Starbucks fired multiple employees involved with the media event for violating company policy. The National Labor Relations Board filed an administrative complaint against Starbucks, alleging that it had engaged in unfair labor practices. The board's regional director then filed a petition under 10J of the National Labor Relations Act, seeking a preliminary injunction for the duration of the administrative proceedings that would, among other things, require Starbucks to reinstate fired employees. Now, the Starbucks again filed a complaint to get to the Supreme Court, and yesterday the Supreme Court, by an 8-1 decision, 2 of the progressives, again, that just shows you how powerful business is. 2 of the progressives on the court supported. Only Ketanji Brown voted to say, no, we need to support employees in all cases. Employees in all cases. Ketanji Brown understands the power of the corporation. She understands the weakness that if you don't put checks and balances on a corporation, that the corporations will do whatever it takes to ensure they crush the union movement. Let me tell you something. One of the reasons you see in the aggregate Republicans fight so hard to appoint people to the courts is because they understand that is the only undemocratic portion after instantiated, after a judge has been placed on the bench, democracy ends. Their statements are absolute. I did a piece at KPFT a few years ago trying to explain why it is that we must be very careful in elections of the people who will get Supreme Court judges appointed. Because, well, I'll let the video speak for itself. I want you to listen to this and then we'll take it on the other side. It's a short video, but a very important video about the Supreme Court, about our country, about the separation of branches and the powers of branches. Check this out.
That piece that I played on the Constitution, when we talk about the merits of the Constitution, what I wanted to do with that argument about the Constitution and what Trump via McConnell is doing with the Supreme Court, with the district courts, with the circuit courts, is to explain something important to you. It's not enough for us to go out there and just say we want to win the presidency or we want to win this Congress seat or anything. We have to change the mold of the country, the psyche of the country, because there's so much that they know that most people don't. Like when McConnell is playing with the Supreme Court and playing with the district court and playing with the circuit court, a lot of people sit back and they don't think it has much impact on them. We are trying to establish a more perfect union. We are trying to establish a system that works for everybody, which means we no longer allow a plutocracy to take it all. But you know what? The American population is wising up, but they're already preparing for a wise population, and they're using the Constitution to prepare for that wise population. How so? Everybody who studied their government classes understand there's a judiciary, a legislative, and a executive. The legislative makes the laws, the executive executes the laws, and the judiciary interprets the law's constitutionality. Well, if we are going to win all these new elections and we are going to win the presidency, the only help the plutocracy could possibly have is the only undemocratic portion of the American system that was designed constitutionally, and that is the judiciary. The judiciary can take any piece of law that the legislative branch passes and the executive branch affirms and say a corporation who now owns all these judges can now say, well, that law is unconstitutional and it then cannot be implemented. We already have gerrymandering that has made the country a country that's not ruled by most. California has probably 40 million people or more, however million they have. And some of the Dakotas have a few 100,000. And both of them get 2 senators. Wow, that's a lot of power for a little bit of people. And now the Supreme Court is preeminent. The Supreme Court is undeniably the most powerful branch of the government, and a lot of people don't tell you that. They always talk about, oh, we have the checks and balances. There ain't no check against the Supreme Court unless we're going to then implement the difficult thing that's called impeachment. But constitutionally, you can only impeach judges with either 3/5 or 3/4. I don't remember the number, which means you have to have a hell of a supermajority in Congress to do what you have to do. So folks, the way they intend to destroy the Roman intelligent middle class is to do the constitutionally undemocratic thing, and that is to use the courts.
And that is what we have to understand. That is a play. That is the game. That is what they intend to do. And this ruling against Starbucks is a perfect example. It's a perfect example that says we can now understand that the masses don't stand a chance with the wrong Supreme Court judges. And we will get wrong Supreme Court judges if we create the wrong presidency. You already see most women want support for they want to ensure they can have control of their own bodies. The Supreme Court says no. Yesterday, a lot of people thought we got a win because you can use the Metro, whatever the name of the abortion drug is, but that's not what the ruling was. The ruling simply said, you guys who brought this to us have no stand-in. Somebody else with stand-in can bring it to us. So swinging that right back to Starbucks, swinging that right back to the power of the people. Understand what our plutocracy has done. Understand what was already pointed out in the Powell memo. This memo created by former justice, or not former justice, but former lawyer for this Chamber of Commerce, Lewis Powell, and then subsequently a Supreme Court justice, pointed out we have to get people dumber. Read the Powell memo. You can read it at my site. Read the Powell memo. I'm just paraphrasing. It says we need to make the American population dumb. They're getting too smart. And then it says, how do we go ahead and implement this? We infiltrate the churches, the media, the schools, and everywhere else. And after doing that, we control their minds. And in that way, business remain preeminent. Remember what I tell you guys. You don't have to listen to me and just believe the words that I'm shooting out of my mouth. Everything that I said is verifiable. I ask you kindly if you want to see what the Powell memo says. Now, I just paraphrased the Powell memo. It's a fairly long document that is easy to read. And you can read between the lines when I talk about why they want to ensure they control your mind, which they're so far doing a pretty damn good job of it. I just go ahead and you can search for Powell memo and read the entire thing. So again, before I go to the calls, we have a lot of work to do. Yesterday, with Rachel, going to watch Rachel Maddow, she didn't take any questions or met with the public. It was a fly in and fly out kind of a deal. But her message was prescient. And this is your country. Fight for your country. Don't sit down and feel like you need to be in the doldrums. Get up and fight for your country.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.